Can you identify these two pieces of wood? They're basically identical, but one of these costs $225 more than the other for the same amount of wood. All right, let's play a game. See these? I'm gonna show you 4 sets of identical pieces of wood. It's the expensive champion versus the budget challenger. I want you to look at them and see if you can identify them first, and then I'll show you how to identify each species and their budget counterpart. But first, these two are well known in the community, but I bet there are angles that you haven't thought of before. All right, try to identify these two pieces of wood. I'll give you a closer look right here. Right off the bat, I know you're gonna tell me that these two species do not look like each other. They are totally different colors, but bear with me. If you guessed anything other than oak, then you are wrong. Sorry, actually, they're both oak. One on the left is white oak, and the one on the right is red oak. Now here's how you identify the white oak. White oak is gonna have wider and longer medullary rays. They're gonna have closed pores at the end of the grain. Unlike red oak, which will have wider open pores, white oak is gonna have a more golden color. There are hundreds of different species of white and red oak here in North America. But with each species, it's even harder to tell the difference between the two. In our particular area, we get more bur oak as opposed to the classic Quercus alba, which is the classic white oak that everyone knows and loves. There's also pin oak, swamp oak, black oak, all kinds of different types of white oak. Now moving over to the red oak. Red oak's gonna have shorter medullary rays, more open pores. These pores are so wide open, you can actually use these as a straw to suck up water. It's gonna have a wider contrasting grain between the early and the late wood. Color is gonna be more of a reddish pink. White oak is gonna be a little bit harder on your tools than a red oak is, but the color is usually gonna be the main giveaway. Red oak's just that, red. But white oak is our weather-resistant superhero. It's got tyloses, which basically plugs the grain so it won't let moisture in. And we all know if there's no moisture, there's no rot. But in my opinion, for interior projects, red oak's gonna win because you can stain red oak to look like white oak if you know what you're doing. And you can see here the significant price difference. Scaled up to 100 board feet, here at K&J, we charge $550 per board foot. That's $550 for the white oak as opposed to $325 for red oak. You get a little bit of stain, you stain it to look like white oak or something close to that, and the untrained eye won't know the difference. I suppose it goes without saying that pricing will vary wherever you go. And if you go shopping at a big box store, lumber's gonna get really expensive there. That's why local sawmills like us are your best friend, especially if they offer kiln-dried lumber like we do. The next piece I'm about to show you has the biggest price difference. They come from the exact same tree family and they're literally cousins. But one costs almost double the other. Hold on to your wallets, folks. All right, this next species is pretty obvious. Which one of them is the black walnut and which one isn't? The one on the left is butternut and the one on the right is black walnut. These two species aren't visually identical, but they're pretty darn close. They're from the same genus, the Juglans family. Now the black walnut here is pretty well straightforward. It sometimes can be confused with European walnut or English walnut. These are very close as far as grain pattern goes. The black walnut is gonna be a much more denser of a hardwood. It is heavier, almost about as heavy as your ash. It's gonna have a swirling contrast and you can see some of the pores in the face here. The heartwood is black and the sapwood for black walnut is going to be white. Butternut has a nickname of the poor man's walnut. I like to call butternut walnut's ugly stepsister. It's not even really ugly, it's actually beautiful. Butternut is gonna be lighter. It's gonna be a softer wood. You could literally take a fingernail and drive your fingernail into this wood. But don't try matching butternut with walnut. Even though it's got a very similar grain pattern, butternut will never become as dark as walnut. But if you want that nice dark color with that walnut character, butternut is the way to go. Even though it's the poor man's walnut, the quality isn't poor. And check out these prices. Here at K&J Lumber, we charge $10.50 per board foot for the black walnut and $7 per board foot for the butternut. A 1x8 by 8 foot piece of walnut would cost $55.97, as opposed to the butternut, which is $37.31 a pop. Now that's 1/3 the cost savings with butternut for something that looks pretty darn similar. The only downside is that butternut is much softer than walnut and it likes to split on the end, so you should always pre-drill before you add any fasteners. In my mind, it's similar to some softwoods like cedar. And if you found this information helpful, please share it with somebody who you think would find this valuable. Thanks in advance. The next one gets a little bit tricky because unlike these walnut cousins where the color obviously gives it away, these next two species are almost identical to each other. Same creamy color, same smooth finish, but one will dent if you look at it wrong, and the other one could probably stop a bullet. And the crazy part is that most people can use either one of them for their projects. All right, this one's a little bit of a difficult one. Which one is hard maple and which one is soft maple? The one on the right is soft maple, and the one on the left is hard maple. Now the hard maple here on the right is gonna have tighter, more consistent grain. I wanna say that hard maple is darker in color, gonna be more tan, more brown than its soft maple counterpart. Hard maple is just that, hard. This stuff ranks a 1450 on the Janka scale. Now the soft maple is said to have a more opened grain. I don't know. Not sure about that. Soft maple is where you're gonna get your curly maple. The figured grain, almost assuredly gonna be soft maple. And the hard maple is where you're gonna get your bird's eye maple, that bird's eye figure. I grabbed a piece of hard maple and soft maple that were the widest contrasting difference. That way you'll be able to kind of get used to it and tell the difference apart. Because a lot of times these maples are gonna look pretty darn similar. Soft maple sapwood is gonna be almost purely off-white. And the soft maple's heartwood is gonna be gray. Keep in mind there's a bunch of different types of soft maple, including box elders, technically considered a soft maple. The stuff that predominantly grows around us is a red maple. Now red maple is gonna be that creamy white colored sapwood with like a grayish silver heartwood. This grayish silver heartwood is a dead giveaway when it comes to red maple. I had to bust out this other piece of soft maple because I really wanted to point this out. This inner cambium layer or this inner bark layer is gonna be a pinkish red look, and that is also a dead giveaway that it is red maple. Now as far as hard maple goes, hard maple is gonna be a little bit darker overall. It's gonna have a tannish brown sapwood, and as you can see here, a very dark light brown heartwood as opposed to the gray heartwood on soft maple. It's important to note that some people use a thumbnail, well they'll press their fingernail or a sharp object, and if it dents easier, it's soft maple. If it doesn't dent, then it's hard maple. I don't know if I trust that test. You could technically use either or for cabinets and fine furniture because hard maple is a 1450 on the Janka scale, but soft maple is 950 on the Janka scale. And that's the same Janka hardness as cherry. And we all use cherry for cutting boards and hard maple for cutting boards. Who's to say we can't use this beautiful tiger maple for cutting boards too? And now for the price comparison, as you can see on the screen here, as far as 1x8 by 8 foot pieces go, hard maple is almost $24 and soft maple is only $19.99. These prices again are here at K&J Lumber. Your local pricing is gonna vary. That's $450 per board foot for the hard maple and $375 per board foot for the soft maple. As far as the 1x8 goes, it's only a $4 difference between the soft and the hard maple, but the hard maple's strength makes it worth it for these heavy duty projects that you need to get done. So these next two alternatives are so identical, they're often confused with each other. I found one of these at my local big box store for double the price of what we charged for the other one. And that's not even the worst part. They're so close in appearance, they're sometimes referred to by the same name. All right, let's see if you can identify these two species. I'll give you a hint. One of them is aspen, the other one is poplar. And we're gonna introduce a third species in a little bit that looks identical to these two. You guessed it, the one on the left is quaking aspen, the one on the right is poplar. There's a couple dead giveaways, but for the most part, it is pretty hard to tell the difference between the two. They are very similar as far as grain, Janka hardness, structure, grain orientation. Now, this is poplar. Sometimes people call it popple, some call it poplar. It's actually yellow poplar, and it's widely known from its green heartwood. That is how you'll be able to tell the difference between popple and aspen. Now moving over to the aspen, you can see that it's got these tannish looking streaks that go with it. Just a very light brown. This is technically paint grade aspen. Both of them are popular with the cabinet community because they can build their cabinets with it. With the structure, it's cheap, it's easy to work with, and then they could use their fancier hardwoods for the face frames and baseboards. Aspen is a lot lighter, almost white, and aspen's also known for its cat's eye knots. And another one that I want to add into the mix that is commonly mistaken for poplar and aspen is basswood. Basswood is pretty darn identical to aspen. One of the only ways that you'll be able to tell the difference is this dark brown heartwood, and it has a narrow heartwood. So most of the basswood is going to be sapwood, and the heartwood is just going to be compacted in the middle in a small ring. So you're not really going to see much. For the most part, it's going to be completely white. You won't really be able to tell the difference. It's going to be tough. If you're matching paint to trim or trying to identify some sort of mystery white wood in your house, the green streaks in poplar are going to be a dead giveaway. But of course, you'll have to remove the paint and any stain first to identify it. The light brown streaks in the aspen are going to be a dead giveaway, and the dark brown streaks in basswood. Basswood carves like butter with a knife. Aspen feels firm, and the sapwood almost looks like it's bleached. And if your local lumberyard will allow you, bring a knife and you could do this knife test in the yard. Now for the price reveal, and keep in mind these are our local prices, so they're going to be different depending on where you're at. Make sure you Google it to see which one of these species grows locally to you, and then you can find the cheapest one. I priced out yellow poplar at our local Menards yesterday. It was $38.56 for a 1x8 by 8 foot piece. That is ridiculous. That same piece of aspen here at our local mill is $18.66, which is $3.50 per board foot. And the basswood is the same price. I don't blame them for marking up these prices because they most likely trucked it in from somewhere else. This is exactly why you avoid big box stores and always check local sawmill and lumber supplier prices instead. And as a reminder, these wood identification techniques work best on kiln-dried lumber. Wood looks different when it's fresh cut or rough sawn, especially if it's weathered and seasoned. Let me know in the comments if you want me to do a video on fresh cut green lumber identification too. You can save hundreds just by avoiding the big box stores and knowing when the cheaper option is better for your project. And I get it, sometimes the more expensive wood is what's required for your project. I want to be able to help you find some suitable alternatives that might be able to save you a few dollars. Now, I want to challenge you next. I want you to do a Google search for some lumber suppliers and sawmills in your area. Now, I know it's going to be a little bit tough because these small lumber suppliers may not have a large online presence, so you might have to refine your searches and do some extra digging to find them. Also, if you're finding value in this content, please hit that like button. Comment your local lumber prices. I'd love to see what you guys are paying for kiln-dried lumber in your area. Okay, so I've taught you how to identify wood using your eyes and your hands. But what if I told you that there are other ways of identifying wood that I guarantee that you've never thought of yet? Our buddy Joe could tell you the species of any wood with his eyes closed. And he teaches us his special way of identifying wood in this video right here. We'll see you there, brother and sister. But hey, you know, intelligence is a luxury around here.